Stop teaching the Tudors in schools, teach the slave trade instead. One of the latest divisive Marxist BLM campaigns to smear Britain and make us ashamed to be British. Firstly, let's be clear, we already teach the slave trade in schools, so this campaign is based out of pure fantasy. But to humour BLM, I wouldn't have an issue with increasing the teaching of the slave trade if we highlighted the fact that Britain led the campaign that ended the transatlantic slave trade. British people died freeing the slaves, and we only paid off the money we borrowed to free the slaves in 2015. That means if you paid taxes up until 2015, you helped free the slaves. Also, will there be a focus on the fact that a sizable number of African slaves were sold to European slavers by African slave traders? What about the Arab slave trade? How about the fact that while a small number of the elite profited from the slave trade, most British people lived in squalid conditions at the time? I doubt it. The reality is, this campaign is an effort to paint Britain as an evil entity and try and make young Brits ashamed to be British. Do you think leftists really care about slavery? How much of the over $1 billion raised by BLM was spent on lobbying to end the modern slave trade, which, by the way, is much larger than the transatlantic slave trade? Instead of doing something constructive, they focus on trying to tar our great country as a nation of evil racists. Now, I'm not denying that we have done some wrong in our history, like every other nation on the planet, but the positives far outweigh the negatives. I would even go as far to say that out of every country, Britain has positively contributed the most to the world. Don't believe me? As mentioned before, we literally ended slavery. We spread democracy and the British legal system around the globe. We're supposedly the bad guys, but we defeated fascism at a huge personal, emotional and financial cost to the British people. We formed the modern world, which has led to relative global peace. We defeated communism. We have built and are still building infrastructure around the world, which has vastly improved the lives of many people. We even created one of the first forms of human rights, the Magna Carta. Let's not forget British contributions to science. Sir Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the computer and even the World Wide Web. The list goes on, with Britain having created 54% of the most used global inventions. Is this a nation to be ashamed of? I don't think so. Let's reset the narrative. We should be teaching kids to be proud of being British. I certainly am.